The lead up to World War II saw many nations hand over lands to Germany in return for not being invaded. Results varied. Germany was quickly able to regain the Saarland, annex the entirety of Austria, take the Sudetenland before occupying and dividing up Czechoslovakia, as well as bullying Lithuania into handing over Memel. And the Western Allies did absolutely nothing to stop this. But when the time came for Germany to demand Danzig and the lands around it, the Polish said no. So why? Why was Poland the first to say no to Germany? Well, technically, Poland never actually said no. Or yes. In fact, the ultimatum was never actually delivered, and the German government simply reported that the Polish had rejected their demands, thus giving them an excuse to invade. However, we do know from Polish communications with Britain that they would have rejected all of the floated proposals anyway, and thus the question remains. So as you'll know, the late 1930s saw Germany's attempts to rewrite or ignore the Treaty of Versailles. Rearmament, secret or otherwise, and an aggressive foreign policy marked a change in the balance of power in Europe. Now, the Western Allies did a terrible job of dissuading or stopping this German power grab. They accepted and allowed the return of the Saarland, their protests against the annexation of Austria were completely toothless, and in the case of Czechoslovakia, their fear of another major war meant that they actively helped Germany in taking the Sudetenland. As for Lithuania, Britain and France simply didn't acknowledge anything having happened at all. Now, to begin, Poland never actually owned Danzig. It was technically a separate entity, one that lived in a sort of legal limbo where it was kind of free, kind of beholden to Polish economic policy, and kind of a League of Nations protectorate. It had its own government and police force, its people were overwhelmingly German, and it very much wanted to join Germany. But Germany didn't just want Danzig, but also these lands in which a referendum would be held. The catch being that all the Germans that had left the area after World War I would be allowed to vote, which essentially all but guaranteed its return to Germany. As such, for Poland, this was far too much to concede and would importantly see it cut off from maritime trade. The Germans had promised to allow the Polish access to its ports in the north, but Germany made a lot of promises and kept very few of them. Not having access to these ports would make Poland economically reliant on Germany and thus little more than a puppet. Another reason that the Polish said no was that unlike Czechoslovakia, Lithuania or Austria, Poland wasn't a small nation. 2 decades prior, it had defeated the USSR and asserted its right to exist. The Polish people would never accept meekly handing over territory to a nation which, on paper, was disarmed. And the Polish government, despite being a dictatorship, knew that if it did this it would fall to a popular uprising, because it had based its right to rule on keeping Poland safe and whole. Reason number 3 was the belief that so long as France and Britain upheld their promises, Poland could hold the Germans off. The French and Polish militaries knew that their alliance meant that Germany would have to fight a two-front war. They knew that if one fell on its own, the other would follow soon afterwards, which in the eyes of Poland made it invaluable to France. And as such, Polish leaders knew that they could rely on Paris. And this, combined with Britain's promise to defend Poland, meant that they were safe from German invasion. Until they weren't, that is, and then, partition. Thank you for watching, with a special thanks to my patrons, James Bizanet, Sky Chappelle, Kartoitska, Marcus Arsner, Yu Duan Wang, Anthony Beckett, Blue Cardinal, AF Firefly, Spencer Lightfoot, YN Hockey, Captain Psydog, Alex Schwinn, Gustav Swan, The McWhopper, Robert C. Perkins, Castle Bravo, Michael Holbert, Shuwenin, Marvin Cassow, Rod D. Martin, Spinning 3 Plates, Andy McGeehee, Kumun Yoon, Mirza Ahmed, Maggie Petskowski, Danny Atanasio, Calling Dr. Howard, Dr. Fine, Dr. Howard, Nova Historia, Copper Tone, Words About Books Podcast, Winston Kaywood, Remco Heusman, Jim Strumberg, Charles I, Lord Beak, Bet Kabot, and Mohammed Al-Kakani.